Are you nervous to talk about what we're going to talk about today? Oh, we're having an earthquake.
On today's episode, I'm joined once again by my wife and co-founder, Morgan Evans, as we discuss the crucial role of mental health in the creative journey.
I didn't even know burnout was like a real thing until I got to speak about it in therapy.
We cover the importance of giving yourself permission to rest, staying resilient through setbacks, and we share our own experiences with mental health as creatives.
Depression looks like so many different iterations, and people sometimes only identify it as one thing. And that's why there's a stigma on mental health.
That's just a small facet of myself. And I didn't want that to be this over-dominating thing that when people think of me, they don't just go, Zack, depressed.
Welcome to Create.Repeat.
Voices in my head telling me it's now or never. Just turned 31, I can't deny the pressure. Even at my best, I know that I can do better. Running out of time, but how the hell can you measure
Here we go.
your life?
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to another episode. Great. That's how it's going to go today.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. It means a lot.
Yeah. Are you nervous to talk about what we're going to talk about today?
This is a home game. Mental health.
Right.
Do I want it to be my home game? Is that a cool thing to say?
I
Or
don't
like
know. No, sure.
No, we're breaking the stigma.
Exactly. So today we're going to be talking all about mental health and specifically mental health as a creative person. We've talked about this a little bit, but for those of you who are just tuning in, Morgan owns a mental health clothing brand called Season of Sunday. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Heck yeah. I own a mental health clothing brand. It's called Season of Sunday. This year, August 16th, my birthday, will also be the 4-year anniversary of the company. How crazy is that?
Amazing. We're both wearing shirts.
We're both wearing the shirts.
For audio listening people only, you got to
Zack,
just trust us. We're both wearing shirts.
We're both wearing shirts and they're so sick. But yeah, today we're talking about mental health. Mental health is something that is so important in Zack and I's life and our marriage and our creative lives. Season of Sunday is a place. The acronyms are SOS. So asking
also
for
means help,
which the international sign for help, which is so sick. Did we do that on
Look
purpose?
at you have your necklace that says
my
SOS.
necklace, it says SOS, which my mentor and investor made for me, which is so sick. But Season of Sunday was born as a place to find resources for people and to raise awareness, to break the stigma, make sick clothes, wear them, and just be kind of like a flag for people. So when you're wearing a shirt that says take care of yourself with a sun and a brain, people are like, that dude gets it.
Yeah. I think it's right now, I feel like mental health is a pretty hot topic subject. It's very much in the zeitgeist. It's way more accepted. But I think even 4 or 5 years ago, it was a foreign concept to a lot of people, including us.
And I think that's why Season of Sunday was born, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were at a point where I was desperately seeking resources. They were so hard to find. It was the first time I ever found a therapist. Finding someone that I felt was a good fit. I was finding it for you.
Yeah. She found it for me.
I was finding you got to be a good partner sometimes and just bunker down and say, this is what needs to happen. And finding resources for you was something I felt like mental health in my life. The only thing I really knew about mental health was that I had a grandmother who was mean and grumpy, and I felt like I
don't mean to laugh.
I know. But it was like growing up in a religious household, I felt like we didn't really talk about it in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of knew, I'm like, oh, that grandma's just like maybe not the nicest. And now coming out of it, I understand like she struggled with heavy depression her entire life. And there's just a stigma about that. I didn't really know anything about it. And it wasn't until 2019, 2020, we didn't have any escape, and we were like forced to face ourselves. We were at a point where we really needed to get some help, and finding a therapist was the hardest thing I've ever done. Finding resources, knowing where to go in case there was an emergency were all things I was like so unaware of. And and what sucked about it too is like I needed help when I was in an emergency. And I think the goal of Season of Sunday is to have a safe place where if you know what Season of Sunday is, if you go to the website, you can find resources. If you're on the Instagram, you can hit a link. We always link one of my favorite nonprofits. It's called Project Healthy Minds. And it is a massive database where there is a search engine and you can put in anything you're struggling with. So if you're like, I am so anxious, it will generate a bunch of resources within your area for you to easily find. And I didn't know about that 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so as many times as I can plug that resource, I will, because that resource has saved my life. It saved your life. And I think that it's incredible.
100%. And it's something that's crazy is how it's so great to try to find a resource or find a therapist before you get a little too far. I've always explained it, like it's like calling the doctor when you're on your deathbed and being like, hey, I finally need you now. You don't want to get that
100%.
far. You want to make sure that you have these check-ins. And so we're big believers in therapy and checking in with your friends and just being open and honest.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we really want to talk today about, is just getting into mental health. And we're going to find a couple posts that we've posted on our Create.Repeat.
Yep.
And we're both going to share them with each other and use that as a way to have a discussion to further continue our story of this mental health journey that we are on.
Heck yeah.
Let me tell you, we are on it.
We're on it. These smiles are built by tears. Just kidding.
But really.
Oh, I'm sweating. Okay.
All right. So do you want to go ahead and do the first one?
Heck yeah, let me kick us off. So, one of my favorite posts, it says, great art comes from great empathy. Empathy is a word I feel like I hold near and dear as an actor, because that is what you need to tell anybody's story, is to see the world from their perspective. Something that I wrote a while back ago, it says, don't numb yourself. Don't turn off the parts of you that allow you to deeply feel. Don't be afraid. Feeling sadness isn't the only thing you allow yourself to feel. If you constantly shut off your emotions, you'll turn off the good stuff too. Don't block out the happiness and joy. You need the waves of emotion to create art that resonates.
Don't numb yourself.
Don't numb yourself.
I think that's really hard. Especially when you're
as artists.
Yeah, especially as an artist, but when you're really going through something, I think the first thing that you want to do is just soothe the pain and stop suffering however way you're going through it. And I think, obviously there's things that you need to do. There's times that you do have to shut it off. But I think that there's something about when you do shut yourself off completely, you're shutting yourself off of the good parts as well.
Absolutely.
And
sometimes also to get better, certain medications are necessary, which also like kind of dull senses in a way. And I feel like that's also a hard thing sometimes as a creative to come to, and something that, again, we support and we've partaked in, and it has really helped through seasons. But it's just interesting how it kind of does shift your creative outlet a bit. Would you agree?
100%. And I think like with empathy, which is a very interesting thing, is it's also like, being empathetic towards others. I think about this like as a writer. When you're writing a story and you have multiple characters, you have to tap into each character there. I think sometimes whenever you see something that falls flat, it's because they don't have these well-rounded characters. And that's a very, very hard thing to accomplish, because you have to put yourself in the shoes of each character. And what does that take? Empathy. And one of my favorite things that I got to do in Los Angeles, I took this acting class, this like iconic acting teacher, Diana Castle. Okay.
She specializes in imagination work, but her biggest belief is empathy. And something she says is, our job is not to see me in you, it's to see you in me.
There you go.
It's not nothing about you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think so often we think it's like, well, I need to see the world from blah, 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 blah. And it's like, bro, it's less about you. It is about that other person and seeing the world through their perspective.
That's really interesting. And like when you really tap into that as an artist, it obviously overflows into the rest of the world and having empathy for others.
Absolutely.
I think like going through a major depressive cycle and feeling down and dealing with a lot of stuff, it opened my mind to what other people are going through. And obviously like you have this baseline, you always want to, treat others the way you want to be treated.
100%.
See that. But when you really go through something that is difficult and realizing that this is just my story, this is just what I'm going through, this is what means everything to me. Every person has their own thing, has their own story, their own story that they're telling each other.
Absolutely.
And I think it really does help you be authentic with yourself as well as having a caring, mindset towards other people. It can only do good.
I feel like that's why everything in life is connected, right? It's like when you're a kid, it's like, oh, kids act that way because they act that way at home. And it's like who you are in one regard is who you are in another. And I think when we have a responsibility to ourselves in our art to hold space for perspective, to hold space for empathy, and to hold space for being open to things. Like I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything. I would love my brain to be open to other humans' opinions in this life. And when we hold space for that, when we're outside of our homes with other people, connecting with other artists, having a podcast, it's like we are who we say we are. That's authenticity. And that's like what makes the world a better place, right?
Right. 100%. Great art comes from great empathy.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Z, do you want to go to your next?
Yeah. Okay. So this one is don't be overtaken by temporary defeat. Don't be overtaken by temporary defeat. Having a life in the spotlight, being a creative person, you deal with a lot of defeat, a lot of failure, a lot of losing seasons, wins and losses. And I think it's really important to just remember that pretty much all of these losses that you take, they're just temporary. And, I'm a big sports fan. And it's really good to remember sometimes like that mindset of an athlete of never getting too high, never getting too low. It's a long season. It's a long season for all of us. And sometimes when you have that loss, it really is going to make you a better person. That's the worst thing to hear in the moment.
Of course.
Especially when you're losing. You don't want someone to just be like, hey, don't worry, this is going to pay off in the end. But once you step back and you have a little bit of perspective on it, it's true. At least for me. You're
like, after you've had 62 losses, you start getting used to it.
You get your ass kicked over and over again. You're just like, it's not so bad.
You're going to start getting your ass kicked.
But yeah, so, I think something with like this temporary defeat too, like that temporary defeat can last for a while. It might not just be like a week or so. It could be a season of your life. And I think sometimes too, like for me, like I had to be okay. I think for me, overcoming that temporary defeat was actually weirdly giving into it and accepting it and being able to step away to work on myself in ways and realizing that I can't have so much output if the input that I'm giving to myself is this rotten input. And so that to me is something that I try to tell myself. It's really hard, obviously, in the moment, dealing with that defeat. But yeah, you just have to keep going and keep creating and repeating.
Keep creating and repeating.
Yeah.
I feel like too, it's sometimes is difficult too, because like as creatives, like what we do is so uncertain. and you're constantly dealing with the uncertainty of like where jobs are coming from, like as freelancers and getting gigs and stuff. Like there are times where the highs are high and you're like rolling in jobs and one thing begets the next and you're like on a high vibe. And then there will come a season where things kind of dry out. And I just think it's so important in those high moments to, again, just enjoy the process, enjoy the making of it, because you never know like when your last time might be, right?
The joy is in the making.
That's another post that we love.
The joy is in the making. I think like we had this moment, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, where we had this really exciting opportunity and we made this entire pitch for it. And we spent a little over a week every day just going on this. And it was a very promising thing. And
it felt like we were playing a home game. Like it felt like it was like, oh, we're playing with house money.
Yeah, we got this in the bag and we developed this entire pitch. And it was a little out there, but we thoroughly believed in it. And we got to the point where we're thinking, there's no way that this loses. And what happened? We lost. And it didn't go through. And
I had already spent the money in my head.
Yeah.
Like I was like ready. I was like, we're going to be giggling all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
And here are the reasons why.
Yeah. This is what we're going to be known for.
And it wasn't also the loss. It's like, it wasn't even tickled with a little bit of like, maybe not. It was just a flat like.
Hard no.
Absolutely not. Like, what are you guys thinking? This will not pay off. Bark, 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 bark.
And I was down in the dumps over this.
You really did take it so hard.
It's really hard. Like when you're a creative, and what makes something that you do so special is how much effort, energy, and passion that you put into something.
It was.
And when you aren't rewarded for that, it feels like the biggest slap in the face. And it's not like an entitlement thing. You're just hoping that the amount of energy that you put into something, that you're going to receive that energy back. And many times, especially in this creative world, you never receive that energy back. That's what's tough about being in this freelance world.
Right.
It's a lot of pitching. And, you know, I dealt with this when we were pitching a TV show. You know, we had a lot of amazing meetings at these production companies and networks. And, you know, we worked on this show for 3, almost 4 years, and you put everything into it.
And I mean, you were going to like every big studio.
Yeah. And having like these meetings and
you were in rooms that I like just didn't think was possible. I still am like, how did you get into some of those? So like, I imagine just that high of being there and like seeing how close and how possible it was.
It's weird.
So hard. And then I guess then too, it was like, then you made a deal with Comedy Central for a thing. If you don't mind talking about that. Like, I felt like that experience too was a little disappointing, and that's also really difficult.
For sure. You know, like there's the two sides of it, right? Where you're in a room and you're ready to pitch your passion project, and you know within a minute that it's not going to happen. And that's a tough feeling where you just feel like a dancing monkey, and you still have to keep this smiling face, and you have to, you know, just throw it out there because you never know, but you know in your heart this isn't going to work.
Got it.
But when we did this like digital deal with Comedy Central, and that was a dream come true for me. I got to go into the Comedy Central offices every day and work, and we were going to make these digital shorts for them. And what was really disappointing about it was they did everything in this traditional way, where we were coming from the internet, right? We were used to ideating, writing, producing, editing, launching a video all within a week.
Of course.
And then we went to this very old school approach where we're talking it took months to get something that was like a 3-minute video out into the world.
Right.
And that to me was a very strange feeling, where halfway through I realized I don't like this. I don't like it. It's really cool that we're in the rooms with these very famous people, heroes of mine. You're seeing people that you really look up to, and I found myself in that moment that it wasn't for me as a creative person.
Dang.
And you know, that to me was like another defeat, where that process, I didn't enjoy that process, and it ruined the final outcome for me. You know, sometimes I really believe diving into the process and the outcome will come. Well, this was one of those times where I really tried my best to dive into the process, and the outcome was fine. But at the end of the day, like the deal ended up kind of getting scrapped. We were supposed to do way more of these shorts, and we only ended up airing one of them. We were creating another one and just kind of got nixed because we ironically ran out of time, which it
You're
wasn't
like,
our
I
fault.
could have executed this 3 weeks ago, folks.
Yeah. And like, I think that's the thing. Like when you all of a sudden are doing a creative work for money and it's a job, that comes first. And that's a really
It's
tough,
a really hard thing.
It's a tough pill to swallow. Even when you're at a place like a Comedy Central, or if you are a freelancer and you're pitching to a potential client, at the end of the day, your creative vision is kind of the last thing that matters in the project, even though it's the thing that's probably going to get you hired and what caught the person's eye to get you into the room. It's going to be the last thing. It's going to be, whatever you're pitching towards.
Do you feel like that's something that we're not really taught? Like, I felt like in college, like, do you feel like we were sold this dream? And like, I knew it would be hard. I didn't think it'd be this hard.
I remember joking that having a bunch of college professors, some of them just looking like death, like the world has just done them dirty.
Right.
And sort of like this, like, I don't want to tell you Santa Claus isn't real kind of thing.
Right.
And you're not really prepared for that. It's difficult because I think what's the hardest thing to do is that it doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if, if you have this amazing vision and you can bring it to life. That doesn't matter if it goes or not, I
agree.
And I think like that is really hard. And I think the only way you can truly learn that is through the school of hard knocks, which is life.
That's also why I feel like, though, BuzzFeed was such a freaking amazing thing that you got to do. That's why I do think TikTok is so cool. Like, there are so many tools these days that, like, there's not a lot standing in your way. Like, you really can do what you want to do and show people. And it's like, how many like TikTok famous creators have gone on and now they're the ones with the Netflix TV show. Yeah. And that might not be able, that's like maybe some of them, the last thing they were trying to do, but that's the opportunities that have opened up for them.
Right. It's funny because you'll hear anyone who came up through the internet and anyone who's in this traditional media they're working with internet people, they famously don't get along.
Right.
I remember when Logan Paul came into BuzzFeed and we had a meeting with him.
Is he the one that's like wrestling now?
Yeah.
What in the world?
Yeah. I mean, he's massively famous. He's done really well for himself.
Okay. I just,
when he came into the office, it was like a very funny, weird thing because this was when hoverboards were really popular. Oh, we're having an earthquake.
Is it okay?
Stand by. We're experiencing an earthquake. We'll be right back.
Okay, sorry, we just had an earthquake, but we wanted to take this moment to plug something. Right now, we have a new collab pack coming out with our friends over at Happy Editing. A lot of people ask, how do we make our pieces of content, our videos, our graphics? What kind of textures do we use? And so we teamed up with Happy Editing to make a pack for you guys. This is what we use on all of our assets, and now you can too. So go over to Happy Editing and check it out. We have a bunch of different things, and I love it. So yeah, support Create.Repeat and Happy Editing. All right, back to the podcast. Sorry for this in the middle of the episode. Okay, here we go. Back to you, Zach.
Should I acknowledge that we just had an earthquake that was really scary? Yeah. So we're in this... Okay, so we are in this old building at the top floor and we just had an earthquake and that was scary.
And that was so scary. My little heart is pounding.
Yeah.
We've since taken a 5, so I have caught my breath. So we may continue.
Yeah, I hope it looked as dramatic as it felt on camera because we will show it. Actually, let's show it again. Hoverboards were really popular. Oh, we're having an earthquake. Just always wanted to do that.
It's literally going to be still.
Yeah, like, oh no. They're faking it.
We could add it in later in post.
But that's the reality of living in LA.
There's so many earthquakes.
Yeah, wow, we caught it on.
There's been so many lately.
Yeah. But okay, so I remember when Logan Paul came into BuzzFeed. This was when hoverboards were big. Do you remember those?
Oh no.
And we gave him a tour of BuzzFeed and he wouldn't get off the hoverboard.
No.
And so there was one point where he had to go down these stairs and he was like,
he rode them down.
No, he was like, I can't make it. I don't care to see the rest of the BuzzFeed. And
Was this the first building on DeLongpre?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my
And so
gosh.
like we had a bunch of ideas that we pitched to him, and he just wasn't paying attention. He was just on his phone, and his manager was there, and he was like kind of giving his takes. But it was in that moment where I realized, why in the world would this guy ever listen to us about ideas about what works on the internet? This man has created his own way, exactly how he makes it.
Yeah.
And I think when the traditional media executives, they like to be those people.
Of course.
They like to be the ones that tell creatives sort of what to do. And so when you pair those two people up, it doesn't always work well.
No.
And the internet people are going, we don't need the traditional. The traditional are going, we don't need the internet people. And that's why it doesn't work. It is yet to work, in my opinion. But just seeing that, and like when you are that person, hopefully you're not the Logan Pauls. No offense. Come on the pod. Drink Prime. There you go.
Leave the hoverboard at home. Though.
Yeah, leave
it's
the
not
hoverboard.
Gonna work here.
But when you are someone like that, you just have to remember that not everyone is going to fully understand what you're saying, or they might have a different goal and opinion.
Of course.
And so sometimes when you take that defeat, when someone passes on an idea, realize that it's not always about the idea. There's so many other factors. And I think it's really easy to put your self-worth into the projects that you're pitching. But a no is just a yes for another day for someone else, or it's just a yes to a different move that you need to make. It isn't a no forever.
I feel like the no from that like big pitch, honestly, it gave way to what Videotape magazine is to you, which is like this really sick Instagram platform that you do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's where that needs to live.
I have another creative outlet called Videotape Magazine.
Macaroni Grill, check it.
Yeah, where I just kind of make videos and graphics of things that I like. It's still very like 90s, 2000s era aesthetic. And it's just a bunch of fun. And also my friend Caleb writes for our Substack and does these amazing pieces. And so it's just something that we're just having fun with. We're not trying to turn it into anything huge right now.
Right.
Maybe it's huge by the time this podcast comes out.
But it's like something you create for you, which I think is so special. And that's a big part of mental health, right? It's like creating for obligation and creating for yourself are two very different things.
Yeah. And it's really difficult, especially when you step into that professional world, because you're using all those same muscles that you know that you're using from your passion, but you're using it to make money. It's a weird thing. Some people feel gross, but the reality is, if you want to have a career, you have to learn how to navigate that. We all can't be soul skaters. That's a Brink reference, the Disney Channel original movie.
Love Brink.
And you can be a soul skater, and I respect those soul skaters.
100%.
But if you do really want this career, that's the dance that you have to navigate. And I don't know if that's always taught, of how to deal with that and how to just keep rolling with the punches and continue to.
Because a lot of this, you have to learn by experience. It's like you don't really know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's really not the funnest thing to teach.
No, it's not.
You can't teach depression.
No, you can't.
You have to live it.
Yeah. So thanks, Logan Paul, for that lesson.
Thank you, Logan.
And thank you for the earthquake.
Terrified.
Which I assume was him.
I assume it was him.
Yeah,
he
he's
didn't
doing
want
some kind of crazy
his
prank
name in our mouths. It was like, cut it or else.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to move on to your next one?
Heck yes. This one's a fun one. Allow yourself to rest.
Say that one more time.
Allow yourself to rest.
So simple yet so complicated.
It's so complicated. I feel like this is not on my note, but allowing yourself to rest is so important, and making the choice to rest is even more important. I find myself so often, because I struggle so deeply with anxiety. And half of the time, what really sucks is if I take a day where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to watch the entire season of Emily in Paris for the 4th time today. I will lay down in bed to do so. I cannot wait for the new season.
It's out by the time this podcast is out. So
I know. We'll talk about it then.
Drop your spoilers in the comments. Who should Emily end up with?
Oh my gosh, we'll see. Alfie's cute.
I think he's an alcoholic though.
Do you? Oh, because he did the little the quickie thing. And
he's always drinking in it.
That's true. I think that's what people do for fun. Okay. Anywho.
Side note.
I'm
that's for our other podcast.
What was I talking about then?
Our Emily and podcast. That's our follow-up.
Emily. Ooh, Ooh, that's kind of fun. Okay. So, but making the choice to rest is so important because whatever you do in life, I just think you need to make the decision upon. So if you choose to rest with 100% of yourself. If you choose to work with 100% of yourself. So often, you're half in and half out and you're not doing your best work and you're not getting rest and you're just meat mop soda popping in the middle and you get nothing done. You're cranky, grumpy, and life sucks.
Yep.
And so allowing yourself to rest is choose to rest when you need it because your brain will thank you for that.
And to actively rest, like
Yes.
before you get too tired, right? Like back to a sports metaphor, the coach is going to try to pull someone out of the game before they're too tired because you want to make sure that when they're on their bench that they can rest up and be prepared for the next time that they're subbed in. And I think that's something that as a creative, it's really important to do to maintain the stamina because
of course
this job takes so much stamina because the nature of being a creative is you are creating something new pretty much every single time.
Something that does not exist. You are pulling out of the clouds and bringing it into existence.
And what does that take? Energy.
Energy.
And it's so important to make that time for yourself.
Absolutely.
That's something that I really try to put into my own life. I've
1,000,000%.
always been like that. I just never knew the reason for it. And now that I'm getting older
and more educated, right?
and more educated, realizing that the rest is a non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
Obviously there are times where you are go, go, go and you have to go. But there are those moments where you really need to recharge or else you're just going to be half-assing it everywhere you look. Before you know it, you have a bunch of shoddy work.
And the back of my shirt literally says, don't wait till you break to take a break. And this shirt was inspired by what I call my brain breaking. It sounds so horrible, but literally like burnout. They're now looking back and now moving forward in life. I think once you have been through a few burnouts, you start recognizing the signs. But before you know what the signs are, you're just going to keep going and going and going and going and going and going.
Doubling down, tripling down, and just
burning at both ends. And then all of the sudden one day, like your physical body will take over, which sorry to throw you out there, but Zack literally lost his eyesight once because he was so stressed out. And now I think, again, when you get headaches and stuff, it's like, we know it's like, hey, it's time to close the laptop.
Yeah, that's something I learned about myself is that when I am really stressed out and really burned out, my body tells me by giving me terrible migraines where I can't see.
And you see stars. And again, that's not a cute present presented at your door. Like, maybe it's time to take a rest. Your body's like, we're shutting down.
It's just pure agony. And it's either hours, days, like it's something that I'm now trying to see coming and trying to prevent that because it's awful. And, other people have other things, but that stress and everything will manifest into your body. And I think especially like as you're becoming a professional creative where now this is your livelihood, there's so much pressure on something that you are putting all of your effort into something and building it up to something that is bigger than you could ever imagine. And then your body is just like, no, dude, we're done.
Absolutely. And some things, honestly, if you're like, I don't really know what burnout is, I'm not really sure if I understand the signs. Working as a professional creative, you're going to deal with work overload. You are going to recognize a lack of control in most areas of your entire life now. Insufficient rewards, which Zack talked about earlier, which is lack of recognition and lack of compensation. So when you mix, you're not getting like any high fives and then you're also not getting paid because you're doing what you love because it's your passion, that'll eventually catch up to you. And it's a scary thing. And you're also going to feel hella isolated, lack of community.
Yeah. And I think this is something about being a professional creative. So when I was a creative director at sort of this more corporate tech company. A big thing that I learned and what was frustrating to me for the longest time is how I was the only creative person for a long time there.
And that's so many people.
Yeah. And what I was dealing with is the things I was getting praised for were the things that I didn't necessarily care about, but the things that I put so much effort in, nobody could see it because they couldn't appreciate the process. That's why it's so assuring when you talk to another creative person who does something similar to you and they understand what went into the thing that you made.
Of course.
And I think when I would find myself getting short, isolated, mad, start thinking about stuff like I'm not getting paid enough or I don't like this person and start getting snippy with people, it was really the only responsibility it was my own. And I needed to, in that moment, have the courage to step up and say, hey, I need a mental health break. It's something that is a very new thing, but I'm so happy that companies are now way more willing to deal with those sorts of things because a lot of times it's not the job. You can't blame a person who, works in sales to not understand your vision or whatever. They do what they do, you do what you do.
Yeah.
And if you start to lose some of that professionalism because you're feeling way too burnt, it's your obligation to either remove yourself from there or take a break or talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
But that's a really hard thing that takes practice.
It's just like, you have to be ready also. It's like when you do speak up, sometimes people aren't going to understand. Maybe some employers are not going to align with your mental needs. And that has to be just a glaring thing because your life is more important than that job.
Yeah.
Your mental health is more important than the job. The paycheck, all that jazz, your mental health is so much more important.
And not everybody has that luxury of working at a place where they're at least understanding of the mental health break or they have paid time off. A lot of people are hourly workers and it's very much their livelihood. It's then in those moments that you need to prioritize the rest.
Yeah.
When you have the time off. And I know that's really hard because sometimes that means skipping a friend's birthday or skipping a concert or doing that, but it's only going to help you in the long run. And if you take care of yourself, I'm pointing at my t-shirt that says take care of yourself, the other things will just sort of fall in line. And I think that's the hardest thing about becoming an adult is that you do have to take care of yourself. It's hard enough like figuring out what you're going to have for dinner every night. Like that is the hardest part about being an adult. But then, taking care of your physical and mental health, no one else is responsible for that but yourself. And so really look into that. Take an inventory of your life. Are you prioritizing that? And even if you haven't dealt with that sort of stress yet, it's so much better to be in the swing of doing that before that busy season comes because that busy season will come.
Absolutely. I agree.
Okay, let's go into mine then. This next one is creativity is not hindered by storms, it's born from them. Creativity is not hindered by storms, it's born from them.
That's a good one.
It's a good one and it's really hard to believe in the moment.
Right. I mean, knowing your story and everything that has kind of built up to this moment, even with your mental health and dealing with things, I think that that's a really powerful statement to stand for.
It's one of those things where, once again, you hate hearing it in the storm. No one in the middle of a storm wants to hear like, this is only going to make you better. Your creativity is going to soar. You're going to have new things to pull from. But it is the truth. And I'm trying to look at it differently now. I think obviously like as a creator, I think we all have something in common where it's this sense of control.
Right.
And it's really difficult when things come up in your life off schedule and they shake up the snow globe and you no longer have that control because it's so hard to line everything up to get something done. And so then when something happens, it's there. My first mental health scare happened in the middle of that Comedy Central run. It happened in the middle. I was working another job and we were engaged. And it was a really difficult time. It couldn't have happened at a worse time.
Yeah.
And I just sort of lost control for a second. And I was a skeleton of myself. Looking back on that now, what that allowed me to do was to strip all of this BS and get down to my pure, authentic self. And now as I've stepped into creating more again and putting myself out there, I'm trying to do it authentically. And I don't know if I always was doing that. I think it was very much you're playing a character.
Yeah.
And I think that's what those storms have brought to me. We just watched the original Twister movie. We still haven't seen the new one.
We've got to.
Yeah.
Is it still in theater? We need to run. After we do this, we're going.
But we watched the original one. And something about a Twister, when it comes, it unearths everything. And all of a sudden, the tractor is 60 yards that way, and the roof of your house is 40 yards that way.
And your pet cow is in the air, and then it lands and dies.
Your pet cow. But when that happens, when a storm comes, it really does unearth all these things. And I think that is always really difficult to deal with, because especially when you're riding a wave of inspiration and you're on this certain singular path, when new things come to it, you don't want to deal with them. But I think the best thing to do and the bravest thing to do is to take those storms head on and to see, what is life trying to teach you? What are the things that maybe you were ignoring that are the things that need to take your art to the next level?
Yeah.
I think like as creatives that need to be honest and bring out our message or bring out what we want to say. Sometimes going right into the eye of the storm and facing your own demons, facing whatever you've been ignoring, is the best way to help your creative soul. It's the best way to heal, and it's the best way to move forward. And I really do think that your best work can come from those moments. Now, I don't want this to feel like really pumping up the like tortured artist motif. I think that's definitely a little overplayed.
Agreed,
and,
yeah.
This isn't also like, Taylor Swift having a relationship and breaking up and then writing an album out of it, although it is very much like that.
Yeah.
It's just about those moments that when something is going on in your life, obviously that has got to be the priority for you and dealing with it. But knowing that that is not the end of your creativity, it's actually just the beginning of a new, more beautiful version of it. And I just encourage you to own that, to be okay with it, be a grown up, deal with your stuff, really examine it, and then learn from that and use it in your own creative work.
1,000,000%. And
Yeah.
sharing it. I really feel like, again, like the reason we're talking about mental health here is to just bring awareness to it and just to be like, hey, like you're not alone. The feelings you feel as an artist, the silent conversations that are going on in your head, the ongoing doubt, the ongoing struggle that you may be facing, the anxiety that like never seems to calm down. Like there really is a world where you can quiet some of those noises. And I really believe like linking up with people who get it and where you can have honest conversation is where so much of the healing comes from.
Yeah.
And having words to attach to things. I didn't even know burnout was like a real thing until I got to speak about it in therapy.
Yeah.
And really being able to be like, wow, like this is what's going on in my head. And this is why I think and I feel the way I do. Like when you're able to place a name to something, it can have its own identity. And then you're not so scared of it anymore.
Right. Because I think like when you don't have a name to something, it's easy to think like, oh, this is just who I am now.
Right.
Like when you're burnt out, it's easy to think like, oh, I just lost the magic and this is who I am. When someone sort of says, oh, you're experiencing burnout, that's a good thing to know that, oh, this is a season that I'm stepping into and you can step out of it.
Yeah.
And you can get rid of that, where I think it's really hard in the moment not to characterize your entire life. At least that's how I am. It's tough
You're
when I'm dealing with like,
100% right.
It's tough when I'm dealing with my depression. It's in those moments where I'm like, oh, I will never be happy again. Never.
Absolute. I mean, any kind of panic attack when you lose your breath and you're on the floor, like you literally think, I think I'm going to die today.
Yeah.
And you don't ever see a way out of that.
Yeah.
But there is a way out of that. And it's like the more we talk about it, I think people will be able to identify these things for themselves. And there's mental peace to be found.
There really is. Talk about it, share about it, Obviously, like I think the biggest thing that was stopping me for the longest time of not talking about it is that's just a small facet of myself. And I didn't want that to be this over dominating thing that when people think of me, they don't just go, Zack, depressed.
But the thing is though, the reason we're talking about it is because you are the most full of life person in a room. You are the first person on the dance floor. You are so smart and incredible and intelligent. And I think when you can see someone like that and you know they also deal with depression, for me, that is breaking the stigma. It is not just one type of thing. Like depression looks like so many different iterations and people sometimes only identify it as one thing. And that's why there's a stigma on mental health, right?
Yeah. For sure.
So it's beautiful that you share your story.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think it's beautiful that
Seriously.
you share yours.
Thanks.
People, hopefully just someone can hear this and feel not as alone.
Absolutely. And then one of the last ones too is it's going to work. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it is going to work.
What do you mean by that?
That's a little mishmash of some Jay-Z energy up in there.
Jay-Z said something similar. We
Something
just made
similar.
a remix.
We just kind of like jumbled it up a bit. Not that it needed it, but it's going to work. It's going to be okay. Whatever storm you're facing right now, there is a way out. And this is coming from people who have been stuck in a thick fog for quite some time, didn't really see a lot of hope coming out. And the doors that have opened up for us so that we could sit here today and speak on the other side of it, I did not see opening. And for that, we say, keep going. And I think it has a lot to do with the word faith and not in the spiritual sense. Faith in yourself and faith in something unseen.
Mm-hmm.
Faith in the unseen hope that you can make it through what you're going through.
Yeah. And like when we're saying like, it's going to work, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it's going to work. That is most likely going to look different than what you think.
Redefine it, right? Redefine success.
Exactly. Like it working might mean something completely different than what you are currently hoping for it to be. And I think that is something that we try to tell ourselves a lot is, trusting the process, sticking through it, taking care of ourselves, using the tools that we need to, get better and get into a better headspace. But it's going to work in a different way. We did not think that we were going to be doing a podcast. In fact, I had no ounce in my body of wanting to do this.
I agree.
Months ago. And it's weird how things come to be. And how
I can't believe I'm sitting here.
Life is crazy.
Life is wild.
That is just at the end of this. It's just life's crazy.
Life's crazy. But who we are today on the other side of things, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It really does feel like a full circle and all this like internal work. It makes sense. We believe what we're saying now.
Yeah.
It's not just the right thing to say. Like we believe it with a real truth that has lived through something.
100%. And it's a weird thing. Maybe it's, going to therapy. Maybe it's being in our 30s now, but like there's such a confidence about realizing that, all right, some days you just got to take the L. Some days it's okay. Some days it's a loss and chalk it up and move on and don't carry all of those L's with you. It's going to work. You just have to keep pushing through. Our last one here is just simple. It's keep going. It's something that we say all the time through our posts. It's probably our most common saying, but we really do believe it because I think it just applies to so many different people. Just keep going. Don't give up. It's so easy to give up on these things. Seth Rogen says, if you try really, really hard, you might make it. You might make it. But if you give up, you definitely won't. And that's something that we try to tell ourselves all the time. There are days where we put in a 1% effort, and there are days where we put in a 200% effort. But each day there has to be some step forward, and you must keep going because you owe it to yourself.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. We did we talk about the 75 hard challenge? I felt like we did on the last podcast.
I feel like we didn't.
Or was that just okay, we didn't. Or maybe that was just me evangelizing 75 hard. But okay, a few years back, we saw on TikTok this challenge called the 75 Hard Challenge. And basically what it was is you had to do 2 workouts a day.
2 45-minute workouts a day.
One of them had to be outside. You had to drink a gallon of water. You needed to read 10 pages of a self-help book, or you had to learn something. You couldn't have alcohol. And is there something I was missing?
Follow a diet.
You had to follow like a diet plan. And you needed to take a progress picture of yourself every single day. And you needed to do this for 75 days straight. So we started this a few New Year's resolutions ago. This is our 3rd year of doing it.
We're obsessed.
And it felt like the silliest thing in the world because right around like day 30, we had never felt better. And who knew that moving your body, drinking water, reading,
having a routine,
not putting poison in your body, and constantly showing up for yourself, how much of a difference that made for us. And I really do have to credit doing that challenge. It pulled both of us out of a really bad funk.
It's a mental health challenge.
And that's what we've been trying to tell people because when they see it as like a weight loss challenge or something. And I really don't.
No.
I didn't even think I lost that much weight.
No, it's not about that. I think it literally, how you're saying, just like showing up for yourself, the message you send your brain to like give a shit every single day, it affects every area of your life. And I think we do our best work during this 75 Hard also.
Agreed. And you know what? Like we started Create.Repeat was starting while we were doing 75 Hard. I think we started Create.Repeat in November, but then that January is when we really started going. And I made it a mission I wanted to post every day. For the longest time I was posting for 6 days out of the week.
Yeah.
And I was forcing myself to not batch create in the beginning and just every single day sitting down and getting in the routine of making something and sort of creating and repeating. And as much as that challenge was helping us physically by doing this Create.Repeat challenge to ourselves, we were able to find our voice. We were able to refine our skills. We were able to grow an audience and make connections with people, either old friends or new friends.
Who were like-minded.
And I just couldn't recommend doing something like that. 75 Hard might be too much for a lot of people. There were days where it was way too much for us, and I get it. But holding yourself to a standard and doing it for no one else but yourself, you will see the results in your work, in your mental health, everywhere.
It's so liberating. And the thing, to just tag one more thing, I think what it taught us also is you have time.
Mm-hmm.
There was time in every single day to do every single task and then some.
Yeah.
Like, period. Whatever the passion project you're working on, today's a great day to start it.
Yeah.
And there is time to do it. Maybe it's cutting out a little bit of the TV, cutting out some of the scrolling on your phone, whatever. Yep. Like, you can prioritize time to do the things you want.
Maybe it's getting up an hour earlier. That's what I had to do. That's
a whole other thing.
I was getting up at 5:45 every morning. Whoa, that's way too early. I get it. I know. Today I didn't get up that early, by the way. But at that time I was doing that, and I was diving immediately into my work and picking the thing that was for me right in the morning. That's what I wanted to do. Was I wanted to start my day by investing in myself. And I really think that you and I are both better for it. And I really couldn't recommend it enough to people.
Totally.
And it's like, what you have to do to get to that place. If you are a creative person who's ever really been, maybe it is that job that you had, or maybe it was when you were in school, or maybe when you were younger and a kid and you were constantly pushing that, what that takes. Like, creatives are the next athletes. You need to train like one. You can't just fully go out of creating out of this inspiration that might not be here. Some days you have to create your own inspiration.
It needs to be a reflex, right?
Yeah.
And that comes from practice.
It comes from practice. And then that's going to teach you so many things. It's going to teach you not to be so precious about your work. It's going to teach you about, just getting better at your craft. I think that's something that in this internet, social media, YouTube landscape, that people don't really focus on the craft because it isn't rewarded anymore. So then just do it for yourself. Go the extra mile for yourself in your content. Don't just do it for the clicks and the likes, So
it'll give you mental resilience.
it will. And so
which
in that
you're going to need.
You're going to need it because
You're
I'm
gonna
telling you,
need it.
day 76 was also hard.
Absolutely.
And you just got to keep going. But if you feel like you're going to give up and if anything, like, look, I understand that. I just encourage you, just give yourself another run. Give yourself, maybe it's a month of just trying as hard as you can for next month and see where you are from there.
I love it.
All right. Well, anything else that you'd want to say about mental health? Maybe go to seasonofsunday.com.
Maybe
this
check
is not
out
a plug.
Season of Sunday. 10% of all purchases will go to a mental health nonprofit.
That is true.
We just raised $2,500 for a local Los Angeles school, and Season of Sunday funded a mental wellness center on campus for this year.
That's so cool. You were just there.
I was just there. I set the whole thing up. The teacher was able to get tables, bean bags, interactive games for the kids, and $2,500 might not be a lot to some people, but to a public school in Los Angeles, it's life-changing.
It goes a long way.
It goes a long way. And to give back like that and to give kids a place that I wish I had as a kid. And one day when we have kids, I hope they have a place like that.
It's just great. It's just amazing that there are still, there are teachers out there that have the heart to create a safe space for kids, because I know you and I both had teachers that had that for us in different ways, whether it's through theater or something or
Teachers
sport.
changed our lives.
Yeah. And
They're so important.
So that's amazing that you're able to help facilitate that.
Heck yeah.
Proud of you.
Proud of you.
All right. Well, this was another episode of Create.Repeat. Thank you so much for listening. Please, give us 5 stars, subscribe, all the different podcast things that I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And yeah. All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
We know this. We know this. Disconnected, but doing what I was called to do. In tune, tuned in, and in full pursuit. And I've seen what karma can do. So do good and let that good come back to you.